The audience is advised that the following segment involves themes which could be disturbing for some viewers.
Now, to the disappearance that reverberated around the globe, a mother who simply vanished and her daughter determined to uncover the truth about her fate. Her quest would become an international podcast sensation called The Lady Vanishes and see an army of sleuths discovering clues that would lead to a coronial inquest and reveal the mysterious involvement of a serial philanderer with multiple aliases, a long criminal record, and a lot of questions to answer. Tonight, explosive developments as Liam Bartlett brings you the first instalment of our worldwide investigation.
Marion Barter was a celebrated schoolteacher and the ex-wife of Socceroo legend Johnny Warren.
Johnny Warren, number 10 for Australia, leading a sortie on the Israeli goal.
My mum's just married the captain of the Australian Socceroo team. He's good looking, he's handsome, she's in love with him. She's kissing the newspaper at school in front of my auntie going, oh my God, I love him so much.
Marion lived an interesting life. She was married 3 times, had 2 children, and dreamt of travelling the world, until in the spring of 1997, she essentially vanished from the face of the earth. While authorities were seemingly unmoved to do anything about it, her long-suffering family has paid a terrible price.
So your mum's been missing for how many years?
26 years.
Sally Layden is Marion's daughter from her second marriage. She spent the last quarter of a century desperately wondering what happened to her missing mum.
I kind of feel a little ripped off that I've lived my whole adult life without my mum. I want to have a celebration of life for her. I feel that everybody deserves that. And, you know, there's an ambiguity that lingers with you forever.
Marion's disappearance inspired a major podcast that evolved into an international tale of fraud, theft, and maybe even murder. But at its heart is a daughter pining for her mum.
Your mum was 51 when she changed her name, sold her house, flew overseas, quit a job. What do you think motivated her to do that?
That was at the end of '96. She was a school teacher and I just saw cracks starting to appear for her. She wasn't as happy at school anymore. She said to me, I want to go overseas and I want to actually, you know, go on a holiday. I did think it was odd that she would quit her job halfway through her school year. It was out of the realm of what I thought she would normally do. But she sold her house because she said to me she was planning on downsizing when she came back. That kind of made sense to me. Owen and I, my brother, were both very settled and I just got engaged and he was engaged as well.
Even though it seemed like their mother was acting out of the ordinary, Marion was determined to leave on her big overseas adventure.
Mum had sort of asked me, could I help her pack up? I said, I'm going to TAFE tonight, but I'll ask Chris.
Chris, Sally's fiancé, went to give her a hand, packing up some of her belongings. But that ended suddenly.
Mum just walked out and said, what's the time? And he told her the time and she said, okay, well, just leave what you've got there and I need you to go. And he goes, oh, I'll just finish packing this box, Marion. She goes, no, just leave it. I need you to go. He came and picked me up and he said, your mum's rude. Like, she just kicked me out of the house. I said, that is so unusual. That's not like mum at all. Like, that's crazy. We went past a McDonald's that's connected to a service station on Ferry Road. Just around the corner from mum's house, actually. And so Chris and I were sitting there. I had my back to the Bowser. And when I stood up, he could see out to the Bowser and he said, oh, your mum's just pulled up in the car. And she's just looking at me like a deer in headlights. And she's opened the door, she's standing there at the car like she's about to put petrol in. Gets back in the car and drives off. And instead of driving straight past us, she went round the back and went through the drive-through. And she zoomed straight through. I noticed there's a man sitting in the front seat of the car. He looked tall and he looked dark. He definitely was tall. His head was almost hitting the roof, but unfortunately I didn't get a good look at him.
Ric Blum's quite tall, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's about 6'4".
What a shame he didn't get a full facial.
Yes.
We now know that Ric Blum lived near. But at that time, Sally knew nothing of him or his involvement with her mother. All she knew is that Marion seemed in desperate need of a break. And like a good daughter, she supported her mum.
So I was encouraging her to go, if anything. I was like, go and have a great time, you know, and just make sure you're back for my wedding, which was the following year.
But Marion didn't turn up for the wedding.
In the name of God, I declare...
In fact, once she left on her overseas trip, her family would never see her again. On June 22nd, 1997, Marion left Australia on a new passport with a new name. Sally's final conversation with her was on August 1, when her mum rang from England.
She was at a payphone. She checked and made sure that she had this checklist for me to do of things for her. She was making sure I'd done all those things, telling me I was a great daughter and not to worry about me, and she was had postponed her trip on the Orient Express.
Did she say where she was?
She told me she was having tea with some little old ladies, and my assumption was she was in Tunbridge Wells. She'd sent me lots of postcards from there.
And in that last conversation, did you get any sense, even from that she was hooked up with somebody else?
Not a whisper.
Marion wrote a few postcards to Sally, but apart from that last call, there was no further contact.
It just really dawned on me that I actually don't know how to reach my mum.
Did you ever see her again? Did you sight her?
No. I didn't know anything from when I spoke to her on the phone, and then I thought for sure she will call Owen, my brother, for his birthday, which was the 18th of October. And so I rang Owen and I said, did you hear from Mum? And he said no. And I just knew straight away something was wrong, because she would never miss a birthday.
2.5 months had passed between the August 1st long-distance call and Owen's missed birthday. By now, Sally was getting worried. And seeking answers, she got in touch with her mum's bank.
I said, my mum's 51 and she's travelling by herself. She's missed my brother's birthday and I'm genuinely concerned because that's out of character. Can you please check if she's using her account? And she said, I'm really sorry, due to privacy, we're not allowed to tell you anything. And she paused and said, did you say your mum's overseas? And I said, yes. And she goes, holy shit, there's money coming out of her bank in Byron Bay. And she proceeded to tell me $5,000 had been withdrawn out of my mum's bank account every day for close to 3.5 weeks.
Sally immediately went to Byron Bay Police and reported that her mum was missing and that at least $120,000 had come out of her account.
Something is terribly wrong here. My mum's supposed to be in England and, you know, money's coming out of her bank account here. And she had no connection to Byron Bay whatsoever. I didn't understand why the police didn't walk 100 metres around the road to go to the bank and go and see them and say, hey, can we get a statement, or can we find out where that money's going, or what happened to it, or who took it out, or... Because if we had that information, I might not be sitting here talking to you 26 years down the track going, I don't know where my mum is.
When a daughter is signalling suspicious activity around money for her own mum...
Something was wrong. I just knew it. I just knew in my heart something was not right.
The police just weren't interested, and the bank was not helpful. And one of the possibilities that Sally now had to consider was that her mother had secretly returned home.
Do you think it was your mum who was taking that money out? What's your best guess?
I think it could have been, but I think maybe someone was making her do it. Because in my world, why would you go to the effort of going to the bank every single day to take out $5,000? Why not just transfer the lot to a different account? Or I don't understand why you would do that if it was your own account.
It would be some months before Sally learned that her mother had returned to Australia without telling her.
So she re-entered on the 2nd of August and money started coming out of her account on the 13th of August or 15th of August.
Until when?
Well, about 3.5 weeks. So we're talking up to middle of September, end of September.
Where do you think she was living in all that time?
That's a very good question. Someone has to know where she was.
Then, late in that same year, came a shattering conversation with the police.
Did they tell you at one stage that they had sighted your mum? They'd talked to her?
Yes. So I had a phone call shortly after I went to Byron Bay Police at that time in '97, and he said to me, "We found your mother and she doesn't want anyone to know where she is or what she's doing."
The police have no record of this communication. Could it have been someone else trying to throw Sally off the scent? We now know that Ric Blum lived in the area where Marion was last seen. But at this stage, Sally knew nothing of him or of his relationship with her mother. She had no answers, only questions.
Hard on your brain, it's not easy. And, you know, my doctor ended up putting me on heart medication because my blood pressure was going through the roof, and I just want the truth to come out. I just want to know what happened to my mum. So I don't really want to live the rest of my life having to search for these answers. So I've lived my whole adult life without my mum.
Sally wasn't making any progress, so she decided to make some noise. A mutual friend introduced her to Alison Sandy from Channel 7, thinking that this case could use the help of the media. That meeting would lead to an inquest, sparked by the true crime podcast called The Lady Vanishes.
This is the case of Marion Barter, missing for 25 years, and the relentless quest of a daughter to find her mum.
So, Alison, let's go right back to the beginning. What was the genesis of the whole thing?
You should come across a story maybe once in your career like this. Sally is a woman on a mission, and she had this big blue folder with her, and when we got into it, my jaw dropped as I listened to the story.
She's a force to be reckoned with, isn't she?
She is going to make sure that she gets answers to this never-ending puzzle and find out what happened to her mum, because it's something that she needs. She desperately needs to know the truth. It's not a choice for her. She has to do this.
So the moment you sat down with Sally, you thought, right, there's got to be something here, more than meets the eye.
Yeah, I knew that there was something wrong.
Now, with an ally in Alison, the search was taken to the next level. The publicity of the podcast would trigger an army of web sleuths. But they still had to deal with the police scepticism.
The police considered her missing of her own volition because she changed her name and gone overseas, but there was no proof of life.
Marion's romantic history even played into theories of where she could be.
The common assumption that's thrown out to the wind is, oh, well, Marion was 51 and she's been married and divorced 3 times. She's capable of this behaviour. Like, you don't know her. Why would you say that?
Extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, don't make assumptions. Don't assume. Base everything on facts.
But you ended up having nothing. When you had no mum, you had no missing person registration, you had no body.
Oh, my brother committed suicide. So after he heard that my mum did not want to see us ever again, after some tragedy that had happened in his earlier life, he didn't cope with that very well, and he took his own life when he was 27. And my only sibling.
So effectively, you lost a brother as well,
Yeah.
not just your mum.
No, we were 17 months apart. So it broke my heart, crushed me to a billion pieces.
When Marion Barter disappeared, her daughter Sally was left with few clues. Putting the pieces together was frustrating and painstaking.
I know she went overseas. I've got postcards and letters to confirm that. I know she came back because I've seen her incoming passenger card. So when she left on her outgoing passenger card, she said divorced. So she's come back in married. And now she's under this new name, Ramakel.
Marion had been married 3 times and each time had taken her new husband's surname.
It was Marion Wilson, and then Marion Brown, and then Marion Barter, and then, you know, all of a sudden, Florabella Natalia Marion Ramakel.
When and why had she taken the name Remarkable? Had she secretly married again? The unusual surname was a frustrating clue until the discovery of this personal ad in the Courier Australian, a French-English newspaper.
One of our super sleuths discovered the ad.
Dated 1994 and written in French, Monsieur Ramakel is looking for a partner. He says he's a cultured, educated, non-smoking, middle-aged man from Lennox Head in northern New South Wales. Sally suspected that Ramakel may be the mysterious tall fellow she'd glimpsed sitting in her mother's car at a Gold Coast service station just before she left Australia.
So we went on this mad search trying to find who may have written this ad. There's only like 104 Ramakels, F. Ramakels in the world. And we found a man who is F. Ramakel, who was the same age as the man who wrote the ad in the paper. And he happened to be living in Luxembourg. On my mum's passenger card, she said she was moving to Luxembourg.
Luxembourg is a small country bordering Belgium, where, coincidentally, Ric Blum was born in 1939. But Sally knew nothing of Mr. Blum when she and a 7 reporter flew to Europe to find Monsieur Ramakel, the man she feared was responsible for her mother's disappearance.
I'm Sally. Fernand? Yeah. It's nice to meet you.
We went to Luxembourg and tracked him down, asked him some questions, but at the time we hadn't thought that his name, his identity had been stolen.
So are you the Fernand we're looking for?
Dat is schon logisch, so.
Fernand is saying he's definitely not the Fernand we're looking for.
Yeah.
The real Fernand Ramakel angrily denied any knowledge of Sally's mother, Marion. He even called the police. But when he calmed down, what he then told them would turn out to be their biggest breakthrough. Because it led them to Ric Blum, a man Ramakel had cause to hate, in part because in the late 1980s, Blum had stolen his identity.
Well, when we found out about Ric Blum, it was like a light bulb moment, and he was a missing piece. We knew that this was the missing piece of the puzzle. He is a missing piece of the puzzle.
And in the case of Marion Barter, that puzzle begins in 1969, when he left Europe under one of his many assumed names to start a new life down under.
And then sometime later,
Yeah?
he turns up in Australia
Yes.
with a driver's license
Yes,
under the name of Fernand Remarkable.
Yeah. That's where it all gets connected to Luxembourg on the bigger scale, so to speak.
Turns out that Ric Blum has admitted to stealing that man's identity and using a fake driver's license that he acquired in Queensland.
Well, it's more than that, isn't it? It's more than that. Ric Blum has admitted to having an affair with Mr. Ramakel's wife.
Correct.
Our investigation into the serial conman Ric Blum, also known as Fernand Ramakel and many other names, takes me to Luxembourg and Belgium. On the way, we'll discover that his trail of criminal activity stretches through many European countries. But their origins begin here.
It's a small apartment block that's since been renovated in the working-class suburb of Tournai, a town of about 70,000 people in western Belgium. But it's where the complex criminal life of Ric Blum all began. This was the family home of a little boy called Willie Wooters, who went on to become a career conman of epic proportions, spreading misery and lies on a global scale.
Ric Blum has left a trail of human wreckage in his wake. And I think that stems from the fact that he was born post-war. It was 1939. He was put in an orphanage and he was there to 1951, 6 years after the war ended. His mum didn't come and get him. And I think that misogyny started then. And from then on, he has just been out for himself and didn't care who got in his way. And he has absolutely no empathy or remorse for these women.
Do we have any sort of concept of how much money he's made from some of these victims, from the women over the years?
It would have to be millions. He is a career criminal. That's what he is.
Do you have anything to say to Marion's family?
The man who now calls himself Ric Blum made a healthy living from the proceeds of his cons and other crimes. But he hasn't gone unpunished for his whole career. In fact, it's a wonder that he was granted residency and then citizenship in Australia, given his record in Belgium.
It was here in 1965 that he was first convicted of fraud, and since then has added counterfeit sales, larceny, embezzlement, impersonation, drug importation, and who knows what else to his extensive list of crimes. But it's hard to say exactly how many times he's been jailed, because the records here are strewn across different countries and under many, many different names.
Willie Wooters, obviously that was the name he was born with. Frederick de Hedevere, Rich Richard, Coppenel, Freddie David, Fernand Remakel. He liked these exotic names.
He was known to some people as the man with the many names back in the 80s. And why do you have 30 different names when you have a furniture store and trying to sell furniture, right?
Great question.
Yeah.
Investigative journalists like Tom Riddell continue to uncover more of Blum's past, and they're shocked by the growing list of aliases and victims.
I sometimes think it's enough for 2 lifetimes, right? It's like, when did he do all this stuff? Like, we have 3 Belgian women coming forward claiming to have lost significant sums of money to this guy. I mean, that's impressive in a way that it seemed so easy for him. It makes you wonder how he did it, right? He walks into their lives, and within 2 or 3 weeks, he walks out again with bags of money, like literally bags of money. It's crazy.
And we are talking hundreds of thousands of euros.
In some cases, yeah, 150,000, or two plastic bags with 50,000 euros each in cash.
In the 1980s in Luxembourg, Ric Blum began an affair with a woman called Monique. Monique, who has asked that we conceal her identity, became his lover, following a chance meeting here at the famous Café de Paris. She was a schoolteacher, and he was a man of mystery, masquerading, in her case, as a war hero.
When I knew him, I told me that he worked in the English embassy as special agent. I believed it. So simple.
She was married, but it didn't matter.
He could talk, it could talk in a way that every woman would have
Melted?
Yeah.
And by the sounds of it, very smooth.
Yeah. And a hero, his family burned in Auschwitz or somewhere. Huh?
Lots of stories.
Lots of stories. Until I found out that it were half were films he had shown. Because I've seen them.
But he was convincing.
Very, very, very convincing.
Did he tell you that he loved you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
He didn't ask for money, but he was about to steal something more valuable for him, something he would later use to entice Sally's mum, Marion.
So he took advantage of you by taking your husband's identity.
Yeah.
And then, down the track, Marion Barter became Mrs.
His woman, Florabella Remarque.
Mrs. Remarkable.
Yes. And then he had disappeared. Just vanished.
But before he moved on to Marion, he wooed many other women, including Ghislaine. She was widowed, lonely, and unhappy. This is the first time she has spoken publicly about how she was wooed by one of his signature cons.
How did you come to meet him?
Parce que j'ai mis une annonce dans un journal fort connu en Belgique pour les rencontres et il a répondu très très bien, une lettre en excellent français, sans faute et vraiment intéressante.
What did he tell you the plan was?
Married in Bali.
Married in Bali.
Yes.
Okay, so leave here, sell up, go to Australia via Bali, get married in Bali, and then get back to Australia and settle in Australia.
Yes.
As husband and wife.
Yes.
The modus operandi is always the same. He always preys on vulnerable, lonely women, usually widows or someone looking for love. He is very clever with the way that he preys on them. He knows what they want to hear.
Did he tell you that he loved you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
It's a method that he has used with every single one of them. He just tells them to start a new life. It's at a time in their life. Start a new life. Come on, sell up your house, sell your car, give me your money and I'll buy a house, whatever exotic location, whether it be Bali or the south of France or Luxembourg, which it was for Marion. He gave them the fantasy.
Basically, he uses these fantasies about this happy place far, far away, and it's a two-way road. It's not just Australia to Europe, but it's also the other way around.
This is a photo of Ghislaine with her children, the day she told them she was leaving for Bali to begin a new life with a new man. But the trip never happened. He and the funds she'd sent him to buy their dream home abroad simply vanished.
He took all my money.
Ghislaine, can I ask you?
Yes.
How much has this cost? How many dollars?
Oh, $50.
But fair to say, it has cost you around at least 300,000 euros.
It may be more.
Maybe more.
I needed that money now.
I understand.
Ghislaine even sold her home to further fund the man who'd stolen her heart and most of her money. But the house sale was the final straw for her son, who persuaded Ghislaine not to hand over the proceeds to the man who called himself Frederick de Hedevery.
And when Frederick understood that, he was away.
And that's when he abandoned you?
Yes, absolutely.
But the man who dealt in fantasy and traded on stolen names like Remarkle and De Hedevere may have had a much darker history. The most notorious crime gang known to Belgian police is the Brabant Killers, a gang still at large today. And Ric Blum fits the description of one of its ringleaders, a tall man with a limp known as the Giant.
We have heard at least in one occasion from someone who said, well, he wouldn't be surprised if he's connected to an armed robbery in Tournai that was pretty spectacular in the 80s. So that he might have been something like a loose member of one of or several of Belgian, Luxembourgish criminal gangs. So we're looking into this one. And the only thing we can tell for sure is that in the 70s and 80s, there's been a lot of armed robbery going on in these parts.
I have seen weapons that he has.
You have seen guns that he has?
Guns, yeah.
Between 1982 and 1985, the Brabant gang murdered 28 people in a crime spree marked by armed robbery and extreme violence. During that time, Blum does not appear to have been here in Australia. But we do know that in 1986, after the gang last struck, Mr. Blum came here to live permanently.
Very often he was getting away from Belgium, getting to England, getting there. I see my associates. That was my associates. So he was in a group.
That's what he told you?
I think that he was in a group.
Any possible connection with the infamous Brabant gang now has the Belgian police requesting help from their Australian counterparts, seeking information on DNA and fingerprints to further explore Ric Blum's history.
Do you think he is capable of violent acts?
Oh, yes. He could kill. He could kill, yes. Yes, I feel it.
Tune in next week for the dramatic conclusion to The Lady Vanishes, when the woman the world has been waiting to hear from breaks her silence. Ric Blum's own daughter reveals never-before-heard evidence that will turn this case on its head.
Mr. Blum, did you kill Marion Barter?
2 years ago, he told New South Wales Police that he'd never met your mum.
Correct.
But now he's admitted to the coroner that, in fact, he had an affair with her for 4 months.
That's right.
It's two very different stories, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it kind of makes me wonder why you would lie about knowing somebody who's a missing person and then say you actually do know them and you ended up having an affair with that person.
Well, from no contact to a sexual relationship, that's a big bridge.
Yeah.
Marion's arrival card revealed she returned to Australia from Luxembourg in August 1997. She's not been seen since. Yet another of Ric Blum's many conquests.
Yeah, the original Tinder swindler.
He's very much the emotional burglar, isn't he?
The modus operandi is always the same. He always preys on vulnerable, lonely women, usually widows or someone looking for love. Just tell them to start a new life. Come on, sell up your house, sell your car, give me your money and I'll buy a house. Whatever exotic location, whether it be Bali or the south of France or Luxembourg, which it was for Marion. He gave them the fantasy. And at some stage, Marion found out that that fantasy wasn't real. And that's what we want to know. What happened then? He's a convicted conman. We all know that. That is truth, that is fact. But is he also a murderer? That's what we are grappling with at the moment.
I don't know what's going on there. I don't have answers. But whatever it is, it's not good. It's dark.
Evelyn Reid has never spoken publicly until now. And what she is about to say may change everything. You see, Evelyn is Ric Blum's abandoned daughter, and her memories of her last encounters with him left her fearing for her life and the lives of others.
What did he say at that last conversation that was so bad?
Well, first off, he was at my house. He wanted to share with me something important, that as his daughter, something he could do for me so that I could look after myself better was that he could teach me how to poison people.
Evelyn's mother, Ilona, married Ric Blum in Belgium in 1969. She was his third wife.
She was just 19. They looked so happy and so in love.
But the marriage didn't last. And Evelyn grew up completely unaware of his existence until a chance conversation with her stepdad in her teens revealed the startling truth. Evelyn tracked down Blum's phone number and called.
The very first conversation was a phone call. It was very short, very sweet. He seemed happy to hear from me. Then we met near the Novotel in Melbourne, went to some restaurant for dinner, and that's where he proceeded to tell me that he was a coin dealer, an international traveller dealing in coins. He had a briefcase with him that was full of cash. He just got back from a big trip overseas where he'd sold lots of coins.
That's what he told you?
Yeah. I said to him, how come you never came and looked for me? And he said, I didn't know anything about you. I didn't even know your mother was dead until now that you've told me. I didn't question it further.
You wanted to believe it?
Yeah.
Do you believe it now?
Oh, no. I know. I absolutely just am still struggling to come to terms with how much he lies.
Whether the stories he told her were lies or the truth is something Evelyn still grapples with. But on the next point, her memory is rock solid. It's a conversation held not long after their first meeting, where Blum, who's been linked to a criminal gang in Belgium accused of 28 unsolved murders, began boasting of his tough guy connections.
He was bragging to me about when he was younger that he and some of his, mates, what they used to like to do, bury people alive with hungry cats, and that this is a style of seeking revenge. He was a scary character.
It was during this same conversation that he told his long-lost daughter he could show her the art of killing people without leaving a trace.
The least I can do for you is to teach you how to take care of yourself. You should know how to poison people. And he went through a very descriptive method, and then finished by saying that if I ever needed to use that method on anybody, that they would develop flu-like symptoms within a couple of weeks. So this is through poisoning food. They would develop flu-like symptoms within a couple of weeks, and then within a week or two, they'd be dead and it would be untraceable.
Few know his art of manipulation better than Janet Oldenburg. She met Blum at a coin and stamp auction in Ballina in northern New South Wales in the late 90s. They kept in touch, and when her marriage broke down, He wooed her with the promise of an exciting new life in the south of France.
Was it his suggestion that you go away, move overseas and start a new life?
It was.
He even had some helpful advice, like making sure she took with her the correct identity documents.
What sort of documents?
Well, it was my marriage certificate, title deeds.
Title deeds to your house?
The title deeds to the house, yeah. And I thought he was a really nice man.
And you thought he was successful in his business?
Well, yeah, and he also told me, OK, he had, I think it was about $12 million when we started the relationship. And I didn't think anything of it, really, because I wasn't after the money. The relationship was what I wanted.
Believing he loved her, she also believed him when he told Janet she should bury her most valuable jewellery before leaving Australia.
Well, he was saying that, oh, well, if we're going overseas, it'd be safer to bury it in the backyard, you know, in the...
So it didn't get finished?
Yes, if burglars broke in, that it wouldn't be stolen.
Burglars didn't break in, but Blum did. He dug the jewels up, took them, and left her.
What have you thought about your own experience?
I was lucky.
But you think you've got off lightly, do you?
I got off, yeah, well, the police actually said to me, you got off lightly.
Which brings us back to Evelyn, Blum's daughter. She flew with us to Belgium, where he and her mother, Ilona, were married. With each passing day, she discovered something new about her dad, and none of it good.
It doesn't stop. While we were here, we went to try and get a document translated, and we discovered that I've been left with a nearly $300,000 debt to the state in Brussels that he's managed to pass on to me that I was unaware of.
You have a tax debt?
Yeah.
While overseas, her thoughts turned to their final encounters in Melbourne and a menacing proposition that Blum put to her.
He said to me, I just need to get legal documents drawn up in regard to life insurance, and there are people who will be signing these documents, and then you don't need to worry about the people. I'll be taking care of them, and then I'll split the proceeds with you.
That's beyond strange.
It's beyond strange. I mean, you know, honestly, I thought after he had shared stories with me about burying people alive and trying to educate me on how to poison people so that he could empower me to kill people. That is the literal sense of what it was that he was saying to me. So putting that together with then these suggestions with life insurance policies, taking care of people, my brain went into full imagination of what that could mean.
A week later, Blum called her. Even though Evelyn had by then turned down his proposal, he wanted to meet.
I was scared of him. Like, I wasn't sure whether if I did an outright rejection of him, whether that would put me in danger or not. I just didn't know. So I picked him up from the airport where he presented to me a bottle of Bollinger when we got to the car and said, just, you know, drop me off and I'll be back for dinner. You take this home and put it in the fridge and get it chilled for us.
She pulled over and he got out.
Jumped out of the car and then I took the champagne home and put it in the fridge and never heard from him again. And the next day his number was disconnected.
And that was it?
And that was it. And that champagne bottle I put in, you know, big black text on it, poison, and it sat on the top of our fridge for months. I think he's capable of anything. It's more than 20 years ago. I don't walk around anymore frightened for my life. But at the time, I was frightened for my life. I couldn't give you an explanation why. A combination of all of the conversations that he had with me, the dreadful way in which he treated me, and I was scared, and not just any normal fear. Days later, I took it down to the Paran police station, and I went in there and I asked them, you know, can someone help me? I think that someone has tried to poison me. I went there because I thought I believed an attempt at my life had been made. Intuitively, I believed that.
Did they end up testing it?
Oh, no. No.
They didn't take you seriously?
They didn't take me seriously at all.
Here's the weird thing.
Yeah.
Stop me if you think I'm being melodramatic.
No.
But when he's talking to you about poisoning people, the symptoms he's describing almost identical to what your mother had just before she passed away at the age of 31.
Yeah, well, the autopsy report says that she presented at her doctor 7 days before death.
With flu-like symptoms.
Yeah.
Like, death has followed him. There's a lot of death in, you know, when you look at Alona, his third wife, she died. Her brother died and her mother died, all around the same time.
It would be good to know, obviously, what happened to my family, but even more importantly is what's happened to Sally's mother. I know where my mother is, but where is Sally's mother? I think that question needs to be answered.
Recently, the daughter of Ric Blum and the daughter of Marion Barter met for the first time.
Morning.
That's a beautiful colour on you. I'm Sally. Hi. Nice to meet you.
Both united by their need for answers from the man who has irrevocably changed their lives.
Oh, I feel a bit shaky.
Me too.
That's all right.
I'm not quite sure what to say.
That's okay. That's okay. We can just stay here and just, yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. Yeah.
Do you think he'll ever tell the truth to the coronial inquest? Do you have any confidence in that?
No. But I believe that it can be found out without him having to confess. I think that they should investigate. I even think that a lot of digging should happen.
Real digging?
Real digging.
The inquest into Marion Barter's disappearance is ongoing.
Trying to get an answer from the man at the centre of this incredible global trail of deception and fraud is not easy.
Outside, Blum was reluctant to talk, and police and court staff tried to shield him from legitimate inquiries.
Out the gate. Out the gate.
We just want to talk to Mr. Blum.
No, you can't come inside the premises.
Oh.
Because you can't report inside on the actual premises on the Court Security Act. So
Okay.
just at the gate.
I understand, sir.
Just at the gate,
but,
please.
But why? Well, why are you protecting him? Well, you work that out. After years of doing absolutely nothing, no wonder the victims are tearing their hair out. The police and the court authorities are now protecting Ric Blum from any sort of public scrutiny. Disgraceful.
Ric Blum has spent decades breaking hearts, fleecing women, and destroying lives. He may be running away, but thanks to one brave daughter, driven by the memory of her mum, he's running out of time.
Do you think there are still people, still somebody somewhere who could be watching this, for example, who knows where some of that evidence is hidden?
Absolutely, there's still somebody out there who can help us. There are people out there that will know more, and there are other victims out there, there's no doubt about that. I think we will find out why she vanished.
Do you think she's still alive?
No. I have not felt that she has been alive for a very long time.
But by unnatural causes? Do you think she's met with foul play?
Yeah.
At the hands of somebody?
Yeah.